kick off here. So, good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chief Warrant Officer Gregg Pescuma, CEO of Coast Guard Station Shinnecock, Long Island, New York, or the Island of Long, whichever you prefer. I'll be covering SAR policies and SAR mission organization. And I don't know where Tom's at because I told him I'd call him out. So I'll just kind of say a few words and then I'll kick into some policies. Search and rescue. Us as BMs take pride in our ability to conduct search and rescue and drive boats, right? But you need to think big picture as an officer in charge and have a full understanding of your authorities and responsibilities, which, where can you find your authority and responsibilities as an OIC? And feel free to put your comments in as we go along. During the board process or the actual board, most likely you'll be given SAR scenarios to start thinking of the unexpected, right? If the board sees you struggling a bit with some scenarios, they might throw you a softball question. For example, since we're doing SAR, what are the three phases of SAR, or what is DATM, right? It does one or two things, kind of helps you out, build your confidence back up, get you back on track. Take advantage of those questions and hit them out of the park best as possible. With that said, although SAR may be our bread and butter, don't let the topic fall to the wayside as you focus on other elements of the 5113. I've seen so many candidates focus more on non-related BM topics, yet come showtime, get a no-go based on navigation, nav rules, piloting, judgment, search and rescue, just to name a few. Also remember that a big part of being an OIC is not only knowing the policy, but applying that policy, while at the same time balancing accountability and taking care of your crew and unit. Also be ready for those opinionated questions. All right. Garrett Daly mentioned, I think in the last college, treat the scenarios as a Becky. All right, conduct your initial action, and once that's stabilized, you can continue to troubleshoot from there. Some scenarios may not have a right or wrong way of handling it, but rather a better or best way, if that makes any sense. So, on the flip side, there's many scenarios where there's certain steps that have to be met. So keep that in mind. I mean, obviously, work life. There's also, steps that have to be met within the SAR organization as well. But try not to be wrapped around the axle on most of those scenarios, but identify the key words to help identify what exactly you're dealing with and what policies are affected. So, also remember, these scenarios or questions are those, the board members either had experienced themselves or know other OICs that experienced them as well. So, there's Brandon. Let's see here. Also, remember, be yourself. Okay, the board does not want to hear what you think they want to hear. Say what you, as the OIC, is actually going to do. Simple as that. Another thing, I found to be a good station OIC, you have to balance the regulations with common sense, right? Some will say you can't make a mistake if you follow the book by the book. Yes and no. I don't necessarily completely agree with that philosophy. However, I think by doing that, you are doing a disservice to your crew. You need to be able to determine which regulations are set in stone, such as alcohol, drug policy, and, which are less black and white. I think SAR, can be gray area. There's going to be times where you might have to bend the rules to do the right thing. So, keep that in the back of your mind. So, with that, we'll move into some SAR policies. Again, I'm not going to hopefully dig too far into the weeds. I'm going to try to keep it brief because B1 McGowan told me to. I'm just kidding. I can get a little long-winded, so I'll try not to tonight. Some of the biggest references, obviously, you got Coast Guard regs, Boat Manual Volume 1, the SAR Addendum, so we'll kind of bounce around that a little bit. Know what your duties and regulations are, or your authority and regulations are as an officer in charge, right? And we're pretty good with search and rescue, but now it's your job to maintain that big picture, because you might not be on the boat at the time. You might be at home in bed or on the couch, so you got to be ready for the unexpected. So understanding authority, right? What you as an officer in charge has to ensure that your unit is responsible for. So this is straight out of Boat Manual Volume 1. That boat unit responsibilities, organization, and operations in regards to search and rescue missions include maintaining assigned boats and equipment in a readiness condition to respond to SAR missions, maintaining trained crews to respond to SAR missions, conducting SAR missions in accordance with established Coast Guard instructions. Evaluating mission risk to ensure Coast Guard personnel are not unduly put in harm's way. So, also note that during SAR missions, SAR mission coordinator, SMC, exercises tactical control over all search and rescue units assigned to the case. So, we all learned this breaking and coxing. Where does that authority come from? What U.S. code? So, if you're sitting for the boards, or planning on sitting in the fall, chime in with some answers. But again, just get you thinking. So I don't know who else we got here. Jeff, what's going on, pal? So where do we get our authority to conduct search and rescue? Jay, how's it going? All right, so the Coast Guard is authorized by Sections 2, 88, and 141 of Title 14 USC to develop, establish, maintain, and operate search and rescue facilities, perform any and all acts necessary to rescue and aid persons, and to protect and save property at any time and at any place where its facilities and personnel are available and can be effectively used. Nah, not tonight. It's sitting on my desk, ready for Monday morning. So, next question, obviously, are we compelled by law to undertake any particular mission? Are we compelled by law to undertake any particular mission? Particularly SAR. What do you got, Heath? Alright, so the answer is no. Alright, it's important to note that the law authorizes the Coast Guard to undertake SAR missions. However, because of the critical importance of evaluating each mission and risk individually, the law does not compel the Coast Guard to undertake any particular mission. So, keep that in mind. Alright, so response standards. How long do you have to initiate action upon initial notification of a distress incident, and how long to get underway scene. So take a look at that. Look at SAR mission organization. So understanding the big picture, right? SAR, between the SAR coordinator, SAR mission coordinator, SMC, on-scene coordinator, of course, your search and rescue unit. So understanding their responsibilities will give you a better idea on what's happening throughout the process of a SAR case. So obviously, SAR coordinator lies with the district commander. They're responsible for establishing, staffing, equipping, and managing the SAR system, providing appropriate legal and funding support, establishing the RCCs and RSCs, providing or arranging for SAR facilities and SAR resources, coordinating SAR training and exercises, and promulgating SAR policies and supporting documents. So SAR mission coordinator within the Coast Guard operates within the SAR chain of command as the person assigned to carry out all aspects of planning, coordinating, and managing the response to a SAR incident. I can tell you on my board, this question was posed to me whether or not SMC can be delegated below sector level. So if you're sitting, feel free to chime in, let me know what you think, and I'll give you some feedback. Of course, on-scene coordinator as SMC may designate an OSC, on-scene coordinator, to manage SAR operations at the scene. Typically, the best qualified person or unit among those available, which may mean that the OSC will be someone without any special SAR training for the task. In such cases, the SMC must assess and take into account the OSC's capabilities when assigning OSC duties. So if an OSC is not designated, typically the first unit on scene should assume OSC duties and advise the responsible SMC. OSCs should be thoroughly familiar with reference or K and appropriate SAR plans, your district, area, and sector SAR plans. 9 times out of 10, your small boats on scene, typically on-scene coordinator if applicable. It's not required for all operations, however, if you're assigned or if 2 or more facilities are on scene and involved in SAR operations, a Coast Guard unit may serve as a shore-based OSC if communications adequately trained personnel are available. So, for example, last October I had a plane crash off the beach. I started out at the station and then I deviated over to the incident command post on scene where I facilitated, pretty much the on-scene coordinator for the Coast Guard assisting in response efforts. So, again, doesn't necessarily have to be on the boat, but can be there on scene, on land. There you go, Heath, with this crossover. You've been waiting to use that. Of course, the search and rescue unit, trained unit with trained personnel and equipment for SAR operations. Unit personnel, boats, or vehicles may be used as search and rescue units. They're subordinate to the OSC and SMC, should be staffed, equipped, and proficient in the SAR skills necessary to accomplish the mission. All right. You might get posed a question, can you self-launch? And the answer is yes. Units are authorized to respond without specific tasking from the SMC. if it's within the guidelines SMC has previously provided. Unit may also dispatch a unit to conduct initial response for single response SAR. So, absolutely, if you get a call, distress, use OIC. It's within your right to launch an asset, but also communicate with your SMC and Sector Command Center. So we'll get into some other SAR policies here. Also, I wanted to touch on warranted risk. All right, again, at a Boat Manual Volume 1, what is warranted risk, and how does that play into search and rescue and potentially causing damage to your Coast Guard asset? So essentially, can you damage your asset when conducting search and rescue? Yeah, absolutely. It caused damage to save a life. What about property? What's going on, Dan? So yeah, absolutely. You can damage the sacrifice or sacrifice of the boat is acceptable risk in the defense of. There's a few stipulations, right? Defense of the United States, its citizens, or installations. Probability of saving human life warrants a maximum effort. All right. So when no suitable alternative exists, and a mission has a reasonable chance of success, the risk of damage to or abuse the boat is acceptable, even though such damage or abuse may render the boat unrecoverable. So absolutely, saving a life, without a doubt, constitutes warranted risk. So as far as property, warrants the risk of damage to the boat if the value of the property to be saved is unquestionably greater than the cost of the boat damage, and the boat is fully expected to be recoverable. So keep that in the back of your mind. What's going on, Chase? How you doing, pal? How's that 87 treating you? What about LE? Can you damage a boat for LE? Oh man, Ben Rowe. Where are you at these days? Oh, Rick. No need to be sorry. Well, Heath, it's easy to give me the answer when I just gave it to you. Or you can blame the delay. Gotta love that 87 life. So, as far as LE is concerned, the possibility of recovering evidence and interdicting or apprehending alleged violators of federal law does not warrant probable damage to or abuse of the boat unless in defense of self or others. So, if you're doing PWCS, pursuit tactical, in defense of self or others. I mean, I guess you could constitute that, Charlie, but typically, no, if you're doing, recreational boating safety or something like that. All right, So you have an idea of the program objectives for SAR to make sure my time isn't. I don't know if I paused it or not. I don't know. All right. So program objectives to minimize loss of life, personnel injury, property loss, and damage to the maritime environment, and to minimize search duration and crew risk during SAR missions by applying ORM. All right. I mentioned earlier, you might get a softball question thrown at you. What are the 3 phases of SAR? Simple question, although it's, sometimes you see some candidates get stumped. But refresh on that. Here's a good question. Can the Coast Guard accept a float plan from a local boater? So can you or would you accept a float plan from a local boater? What's going on, Ted? So typically, obviously we promote boaters filing a float plan, typically, with their family or a friend. However, typically don't promote filing a float plan with the Coast Guard unit, but if a unit does accept one, forward it immediately to the SMC. What's up, Adam? Hey, I appreciate you stopping by the other day, man. It was good seeing you. And of course, I'll see you again next week. But let's see what else we got that I didn't touch on just yet. So we'll dive into some of the SAR addendum policies. Know your search patterns. Know what your drifting search patterns are. Your precision search patterns. Know your track spacing. What's the track spacing for a PIW, right? Usually everyone knows it's 0.1, nautical miles, 200 yards. You might get thrown for a loop for initial track spacing for a vessel less than 15 feet and good, winds less than 15 knots, seas less than 3 feet. What's the track spacing? So be ready for something a little different, maybe, Chapter 4 or Section 4 of the SAR addendum is going to be key for going through your policies. Know what MSAP is and what that's for. I think Brandon's got Google on his phone or something. Know what MSAP stands for. You might have your board president who is a SMC, and a lot of the questions might be geared towards SAR organization and policy. So be ready for it. What's going on, Don? What you know about that big case, Nick? And which one are you talking about? We had a busy couple weeks. Let's see, MARBs. Know what the 10 factor is, and there's a flow chart. It's in the SAR addendum. What's going on, Brian? It's pretty much a one-stop shop, whether or not we're responding or sending a MARB, or the vessel's in distress, command centers use these trip words, know what the 10 factor is, know what constitutes a MARB and what doesn't. Reasonable amount of time or to get on scene for commercial assistance. Typically, when are you going to launch? Vessel 35 nautical miles offshore. Yeah, I'll cover that in a bit, Nick. Know, your general salvage policy other than towing, firefighting policy, surface swimmer policy, because I guarantee you will get scenarios that are going to kind of you're going to want to teeter on the fence as to, are you going to follow policy, or are you going to deviate to save a life, or whatever the case may be. And I'll kind of touch on that in a little bit here. Can auxiliary conduct search and rescue? Yeah, no, good point, Brian. Look at the QRCs. If you have a comms room at your station or contact your sector, look at the QRCs. It's pretty much a one-stop shop. So can auxiliary respond to SAR? Yeah, absolutely. Those that are sitting, definitely think about your role as the OIC when it comes to SAR. I gotta admit, sometimes it's tough. You want to be out there, but it's not always going to be the case. You're gonna have to rely on your crew. Have trust and monitor from afar at times. So a lot of folks on here right now just passed the board in the spring. So they're providing a lot of good information. Bias for action, 10 factor, sector Long Island Sound board hit on those. So anyone got MSAP? Mr. Poole, how you doing, buddy? So MSAP, Maritime SAR Assistance Policy, essentially enacted in 1982. What that was designed for was to minimize the possibility of Coast Guard competition or interference with commercial enterprise, allowing them the opportunity to make a living and respond before we get involved. But definitely review that. Also, another thing I want to touch on was forcible evacuations of vessels. Do we have the authority to do it? Is there a preferred alternative in terms of voluntary evacuation? What are the risk considerations, decision authority, and then the use of force considerations? I can tell you there's been times or cases where, specifically with sometimes commercial vessels, right? The master, usually not the owner, they're a little more reserved and kind of wait till the last minute. until the conditions really get worse, and then it makes it more difficult for us to affect the rescue if weather conditions don't allow it. But I had a case where they pretty much waited to the last minute. They got their pilot house window got busted out because the seas started picking up, and I think that's what got them a little nervous, and then they wanted it off. But it could have went a lot smoother had they decided to get off a lot earlier. But so just keep, look that up. Yep, Matt, you got MSAP. But no, that forcible evacuation is an option. Obviously, voluntary is most preferred. But if that is a last resort, make sure the crew's properly trained, qualified, and supervised. Coast Guard law enforcement personnel. But yes, it is a option. Hopefully, last resort. All right, so another big thing that you're going to come across as an OIC is, getting a call from your coxswain, whether a vessel ground, and they're asking you to pull them off. So know the general salvage policy other than towing, what you can do, what are some prudent actions that you can do. Look up operator assistance. And, why would you attempt to pull that vessel off if that's the route you choose? Yeah, prevent further damage. And again, I mean, it's that coxswain painting that picture to you. Treat these scenarios as if you're at home, you're on the couch, you're in bed, trying to get the totality of the case. Having been on both sides, being that coxswain and being an OIC CO. You know what questions they ask, and obviously, if it's within the unit's capabilities, and it's going to prevent a worsening or complete loss of the vessel, or whatever the case may be, it can be at your discretion. Also, ensure that if the operator insists, right, that you're under no obligation to agree to any such request or demand. If the decision to comply with such request is made, make sure it's logged under 16 that the operator is assuming the risk of the operation. Question: there's a pleasure craft aground in your AOR. All persons are safe, and the owner is requesting Coast Guard assistance to refloat the vessel. Can you do this? What's going on, Ben? How you doing, buddy? So, yes, usually when no commercial salvage is reasonably available. Again, if it's in the Coast Guard's capabilities of rendering the assistance, the owner requests the assistance and agrees to the specific effort to be made. And Coast Guard units and personnel are not in any unduly hazarded by the operation. I mentioned, know your firefighting policy. Another big thing, direction and navigation assistance to mariners. You all know you shouldn't make recommendations current standard navigational information, charted information. You don't want to be responsible for putting someone aground or on a jetty. So stick to charted information, and you should be good to go. Let's see. Look up, Medevac, Medico, what they stand for. In the event that you do have to do a Medevac, who are you routing that through? Who are you getting advice from? Auxiliary underwaters interfering with commercial salvage. I mean, they really shouldn't be. Flight surgeon, yeah. Again, I don't want to get too much further into it. Know your search patterns, know track spacing, know. I want you to think more of scenario-based type questions. Obviously, know your policies, but when it comes to search and rescue, you got your policy and you got your application, right? There's so many different avenues or factors that get put into a SAR case that is always up for discussion. So Nick brought up a case I had Monday night. I got a call directly from the SMC, and it was a 43-foot fishing vessel, disabled. It was about 40 miles or so off Shinnecock Inlet, and so we have 47s. We're not a heavy weather unit. Used to be a surf station, then heavy weather, and got downgraded a few years ago. But we have 47s, and it was a discussion because we had a band of really strong, severe thunderstorms rolling through, and the radar did not look pleasant. So we had a discussion amongst SMC and the command center, and it was, do we go? Do we wait? Bringing up, hey, we're probably going to be outside parameters if we go as we go through these bands. And, it's a discussion with the coxswain. Does the coxswain feel comfortable? And you're kind of bridging that gap between the command center and the coxswain to make sure everyone's on the same page and what the plan is, what they're asking of us, and so on and so forth. And it's kind of maintaining that big picture as the OIC and trying to look at every different avenue. But it's having that conversation. So, long story short, we had a window to at least get offshore, and certain times they got up to 40 knots, gusts up to 50, hail. Seas were building. They got on scene. They effected the tow flawlessly, even though it was a tricky setup. And then, thanks to my crew, a relief crew went in and got underway in the middle of the night, rendezvoused with them about 18 miles out so the other crew can get some rest. And finished the tow out. So I think it started out probably between 8 and 9 o'clock, and they got back in at 06. So I mentioned this because, there's going to be times where, you might be out and you might be outside parameters. So, have that discussion. You know what I mean? It's because you might be outside parameters doesn't necessarily mean you can't go, right? Even though you might not supposed to be going, but if it's in efforts to affect a rescue, have that conversation. And again, know your people, know your crew, trust your coxswains, and it was a great case. Some of these folks that were on it are currently watching. That went in on their off time, so I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Tom Cullen. I know he enjoyed it. So yeah. No, I hear you. I'm surprised we're not heavy weather anymore. Trust me, I'm documenting. If you ever been out Shinnecock Inlet, that inlet can be unforgiving. That was another discussion we had. If we get out, are we able to get back in? But it's that risk versus gain, right? So it was definitely a good case. And then also think about those scenarios that you get offshore, you have a disabling casualty, you lose an engine. Are you going to continue on your mission? You're going to turn around. You get a capsized vessel, someone stuck under the hull. You know what the surface swimmer policy is, right? Don't go under to affect the rescue. Try to use all available means to get the person out. What are you going to do? You're at home, your coxswain, has someone in the water, and they're telling you, hey, they can get them. What are you going to relay to your crew? Same with a person in the water, or a drowning victim, right? You have someone who's underwater. You can visually see them. You can advise your crew to go down and get them. I mean, you got to introduce that human factor too, right? You know what policy says, but I'm not saying break policy, but I want you thinking about it, especially come board time. Oh yeah. Where'd you get knocked down? Were you in the inlet? I'll have to expand your comment. So I have a briefing matrix for when the crew contacts me. I have to relay that probably several times, but it's there. And some units have a CDO, some may not, to help filter some of that information. So when you're OIC, it's not a bad idea, I guess, depending on your crew size, to kind of give you somewhat of a break. I mean, you're going to be notified regardless, but it's going to be up to you what you want to be notified on, or what you want to be briefed on the next morning. You make that decision and figure it out. But yeah, I swear I've seen that inlet probably break 20 feet at times. It's definitely unforgiving for sure. Where am I at, Nick? Oh man, definitely going over. feel free to reach out to me. I'm in Global. I'm the only one with that last name. Don't hesitate. I know I got Tom Cullen who's sitting. So there you have it, Tom. You're sitting. I do currently have CDOs. We had a pretty big turnover, so I mean, right now it's XBO, me, kind of going back and forth. Soon to be a few others. Chase, are you sitting? If there is anything I really haven't touched on, I apologize if I'm kind of bouncing around different policies. I mean, I don't know if you want me reading the whole SAR addendum, but definitely look at Chapter 4. I got you, Chase. I mean, hey, you got a good CO, but don't hesitate to reach out. I got a bunch of scenarios that I can go over with you, and that goes for anyone sitting for the boards. Don't hesitate to reach out. XBO life. See, I had the luxury of being an XBO on 87, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. There's probably some stuff that I had planned on mentioning that I'm drawing a blank on, but again, I say this because the board only has, each board member only has so much time, and search and rescue is just one component of it. So my only advice is don't dig too much into the weeds on any one topic. You should by now know what's important and what you deal with on a daily basis. Have good discussions with the SMC. Get to know your SMCs. Typically, it's your response chief or whoever is designated to, but because they're going to rely on you too for you're going to know your AOR better than them, so they're going to be asking you for advice as well, and bouncing feedback back and forth. So. Oh yeah, balancing that job and board preps. I remember when I was prepping at Station St. Pete. I think I locked myself in the office and slept on a cot for about 2 weeks. But I know Nick has mentioned it. It's definitely a conversation for the spouse. If you have one, family, of what they're about to go through as well, because it does take a toll on both parties. Yeah, I'd love to go back. I'm just kind of flipping through, see if anything stands out that would be some of importance, or at least for the board. Mr. Roberts, how's it going? Like I said, be ready to answer those softball questions. It's nothing you probably haven't asked on a coxswain board or heard on a coxswain board. And then be ready for the big picture type questions. Dive into Coast Guard regs. Chapter 4, Part 3. Know what your authority and responsibilities as an OIC pertaining to your unit, search and rescue, and the missions, right? All right. Tom mentioned going against the advice of a flight surgeon or for medevac. At the end of the day, you or your coxswain who's on scene, depending on the scenario, it could ultimately be your call, right? There's been a time where I had a small child kicked in the head by a horse on the beach, and I had EMS waiting, 200 yards across the channel, and ended up beaching the boat, bringing him over, and without having gone through flight surgeon. That was a call I made based on the severity of it, and you gotta just make that decision. You know what I mean, and be ready to articulate why you did what you did. But if time isn't of the essence, please, I encourage you, obviously, go through your flight surgeon prior to doing any transports. But yeah, it's you, like I said, you're on scene. Paint the picture. Time is of the essence, and if you don't transport that victim, and they may possibly die, then absolutely go for it. What's going on, Christian? I promise you I could ramble all night, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. It's almost an hour. I did it again, Nick. I'm sorry. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. Nate, what's up, pal? I'll be happy to discuss scenarios, any other topic. Yes, mock board, absolutely. So I did a lot of the Zoom boards for the last college, amongst a lot of the other COs and OICs, and I my XBO who sat in the spring did the mock board, and I thought it was could be more valuable. I can't remember, was it 7 out of the 8 ended up getting certs. Gives you the opportunity to see the board members. The board members sees you, and on top of that, you get to see the playback of the whole board, so you can kind of see if you have any nervous tics. And I know Heath, if you're still watching, if you want to put a plug out there, because I know you did it as a candidate, so I know you had some pretty positive feedback about it. I appreciate it, Nate. Hope all is well. was going through the process, I wish I had this resource, and these mock boards. Definitely take advantage of it. It's been great. Throw a plug out there for Master Chief Ellis, who just took over Rating Force Master Chief. Great job with the podcast. I thoroughly enjoy it. Gives me something to listen to on my drive into work. I've been hearing my crew rave about it as well, so good things. And of course, farewell to Master Chief Hoffling. I know he's right down the hall, but fantastic job over the last 5 years. I can't speak highly about you. So thank you. All right, Chase. Have a good one, buddy. And if you have any questions, comments, feel free to reach out and or reach out via the OIC study page. Email me, call me. Happy to talk about anything you want to discuss. So with that, I think I overstayed my welcome, and I will leave you with that. So everyone have a great night, and if you're sitting for the boards, good luck, and enjoy the process. Get as much as you can from it. So all right, see you, O'Hare.